The information economy has arrived. The world is teeming with innovation as new business models reinvent every industry. Inside Analysis is your source of information and insight about how to make the most of this exciting new era. Learn more at InsideAnalysis.com.
InsideAnalysis.com.
And now, here's your host, Eric Kavanaugh.
All right, folks, welcome to the future. Indeed, it is Monday at 3 Eastern time. That's when we record this show, of course. Some of you are hearing it later, obviously. Time for Inside Analysis, the only coast-to-coast radio show that's all about the information economy. Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh, here with our good buddy, Yves Mulkers. And we also have a special guest with us today. The Chief Product Officer and Senior Vice President, Rohini Kasturi, is here with us from SolarWinds. So the show is all about winds of change, how an industry leader is evolving. And I'll just say a couple quick words, then we'll bring our guests in. Things are changing dramatically in the enterprise software space. My goodness, in the past 20 years, it is just remarkable how much change has taken place, whether that's the cloud, whether it's artificial intelligence, whether it's big data, for example, or open source. Open source in and of itself has really fundamentally changed how enterprise software is designed, deployed, managed. And we have these stacks now. We have GitHub, now we have Copilot, we have all these things going on. What does that all mean? It means the world is very, very, very complex. And so things like security and governance, which have always been difficult, which have always been hard to do, have gotten significantly harder. So what's the response to that? Well, obviously, you have to get better at what you're doing. And so the security vendors, the governance vendors, the observability vendors, we'll talk about that today, all of them have upped their game. It's really amazing to watch. And we did some business earlier this year with a company called Mesmo. And what those folks do is they sit on top of your observability information pipelines and they orchestrate where that goes. And the reason being, you start using some of these tools and technologies and you gather all this data. And at first it doesn't seem like a problem because, yeah, it's cheap to store data. Yeah, until you get like a year in and 2 years in, when all of a sudden it's not that inexpensive to store all that data. And now you're paying out the you-know-what for all these different storage solutions. So point being, it is a very, very complex world these days. It's getting more complex by the day. And then just the pricing structures. Think about what the cloud has done to user access, to user interface, but also to simplicity and to complexity under the hood. It's actually more complex under the hood in some senses, but the usability is so much easier. And then the costs, well, what happened? You went from big ticket monolithic licensing costs to smaller monthly as a service, subscription service. A lot of the open source vendors will basically sell their services in helping you install all this stuff and maintain that stuff because it's open source. So if it's open source, it's free, right? Not really. Anyway, that's a very long-winded introduction, and I'll throw it over to Yves Mulkers for his opening comments here. Yves, it's a very complex world these days. And the companies that are in the space trying to secure us, trying to help us govern and stay vigilant, they're having to work overtime. What's the answer? What do you think is going on, and how can we make the most of it, Yves?
You already said it's observability, understanding how it all connects together and see what goes where. Having that transparency is these days very important. And as I'm all the time in the data space, I just today had an earlier discussion with somebody else. And we were discussing about the data stack, where you have the various components that fit together to provide that insights out of your data. And it's, again, how they tie together, integration, and who does what. And I think having a system in place that helps you on managing who has the responsibility of which part from where, that's of uttermost importance. Back in the days, it was pretty simple. You went to the mainframe and you knew who to talk to, right, and people could help you. So you only had a system, but now it's so layered that, yeah, like you say, it has become so complex in these days to, as an IT person, a technical person responsible of the infrastructure, of security, to keep track of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you used to have all sorts of different departments, and you still do. I think some of that is going to change here as a CDO, for example, Chief Data Officer, is going to be also responsible for security in his or her domain. It's not just going to be one person. And I'll bring in Rohini in 1 second here, but my business partner, Dr. Robin Bloor, he's British, born in England, so he's got a British accent, and he always has these witty things that he would say. And one of his comments cracked me up one day when he said, everyone has a security leader, and his name is Scapegoat. Meaning like when it goes south, like, oh, you're fired. Bring the next person in here. It's not like they change anything. It's not really that person's fault. It's just hard to stay on top of these things. But with all of that said, Rohini Kasturi from Solar Winds, welcome to Inside Analysis. And you folks are in the middle of a big change. You're trying to do a sort of branding and image change, but also a pricing change. Tell us what's going on at Solar Winds and what you're trying to accomplish.
Eric and Eve, thank you so much for having me on the show. You've articulated all the business challenges already very well, right? There is a significant transformation happening in the world, which is cloud transformation. Data is growing and data is exploding on the clouds. Governance, compliance are all critical requirements for companies. Security is a big challenge. So what we realize at SolarWinds is, we have been a leader in the monitoring space for the last 25 years, right? Leader in network monitoring, infrastructure monitoring. But over the course of years, we have acquired a lot of companies in application monitoring, database monitoring, many other spaces. So what we're doing over the last 2 years really is we're embarking on this SolarWinds platform strategy, which is evolving from monitoring to observability, right? Where observability becomes the foundation for future autonomous operations, right?
Right.
So we're trying to bring in all capabilities like network infrastructure, app, database, all of them into a unified platform so that we can be more relevant in the new world and really make all the difference that customers are looking for. That's why you see a lot of change and transformation happening.
Sure. Yeah. And so, from an organizational perspective, from the SolarWinds perspective, you're looking at this world that is changing dramatically. You're looking at the risk profile shooting up, quite frankly, but you also are watching as machine learning and AI come along and really mature to be able to hack through this stuff. And, when you talk about monitoring and observability, usually what you're trying to do is understand the steady state, like what is normal, what should it look like, and then you watch out for anomalies, you watch out for changes in behavior. I was joking with Eve that just today, as I was preparing for this call, ironically enough, I started getting all these emails in my inbox of confirm your subscription, confirm your subscription. I'm like, what's going on? Someone has, not necessarily hacking me, someone just trying to be annoying to me by setting up a script that goes and like signs me up for all these things. So I set up a filter, find any email that has the words confirm and subscription in it, and send it to my trash folder. So, I won't be intentionally signing up for too many new ones because I won't be able to find the confirmation email unless I go looking for it. But the point is, like, these things can happen now. Like, there are all these things that people can do to cause trouble. And sometimes it's ransomware. Sometimes they're just mischievous. But, what are your thoughts about being able to leverage the newer technologies like AI and ML to help us kind of hack away at all the underbrush and get to the real problems that are going to cause us trouble?
Absolutely. Great question, Eric. So if you look at AI is the fundamental underpinning of observability. So what I really mean by that is, once you start collecting data from infrastructures, applications, databases, and you name it, in all types of nodes and devices that are out there that are spread across clouds, you do have tons of data, whether it's logs or metrics or traces or a lot of data. And it's hard for a DevOps professional or a cloud ops or an IT professional to really look into everything to understand what the anomaly is, right? That's where AI ML really comes into picture, because you're not only collecting all the data, but you start correlating the data, you start analyzing the data, you look at where the anomalies are, and you start pretty much start translating into business problems, right? For example, if you have a business service that you're running on a cloud or a distributed cloud, you want to really know the health of that business service, right? What is the SLA of the business service in terms of availability or performance? So let's say we say the availability is 99.999 in terms of availability. You want to know, hey, where is this one time where the availability is missing? What is the root cause for it? Is it a network that's causing a problem? Is it an application node? Is it a database query that's causing a problem? You want to know where the root cause is. So that's where AI and ML come into picture, because you're really finding the root cause. You're trying to detect the anomaly. You're trying to highlight it to the user, trying to correlate to the problem and so on. But again, the journey of AI for us has just begun, right? Because observability is just the first part of the overall journey. Where we see the market shifting is really to autonomous operations, where technologies like generative AI and chat GPT will become the critical building blocks, where the actual operations users can start dictating their business requirements to say what they want to achieve in their
Right.
organization, and the underlying platform and systems will go do the right thing and come back and say, hey, I managed the application that you wanted me to manage and remediate. I did all that. The SLA is so and so. These are the two things that I'm not able to do in an automated manner. Can you go fix it? It could be a storage disk that is failing for the last 3 times or 3 days that might have
Interesting.
to be replaced and so on, right? So that's kind of how we are seeing this world of observability evolving to autonomous operations, Eric.
Right, right. So what you're saying, just so our audience understands, is that these large language models like ChatGPT, like Bard, there are some others, Dolly, Databricks has rolled out their own Dolly 2.0 already. These are very powerful technologies that can essentially predict words is what they do. But really what you're seeing is a fusion of that technology with chatbot technology. And, chatbots were actually doing pretty well in the last couple of years, in part because of the technologies behind them, the ability to build a sort of decision tree for the chatbot to deal with. So you identify, does this person want an address? Okay, boom, solve that problem. Does this person want more information? Is it a complaint? What is this thing that's coming in? And quickly sort it out. And with those decision trees, which are built using building blocks that are rudimentary and they're, I guess, sort of imperative in nature, to use the programming language, those are good. But really, the more declarative architectures that we're seeing now can be very compelling, because already with declarative programming, and a lot of these new technologies use declarative, you're just telling the system the end goal that you want, and then it goes and figures out how to do that, which, I'm not going to lie, kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
But it does get that done. And so now when you connect, when you have an LL, large language model, in between you and your systems, that gets very interesting, because, like I've mentioned to Eve, the first question in my mind after I saw these large language models work was, well, if they can write in English, French, and German, I'll bet they can write in Java and HTML and COBOL too. And guess what? They sure can, right? So they can write code for you. Now, you do have to tidy it up, but we're just at the beginning of this process. So these LLMs, as a sort of intermediary, as a really supercharged chatbot for the operator, are going to be very powerful and solve lots and lots of problems that we've really never been able to solve before, at least not at that speed, right? Is that about right, Rohini?
100%, Eric. You actually articulated it well, that the convergence is what is going to create that impact. The convergence of generative AI, chat GPT, this whole conversational AI, or chatbots and so on that you mentioned, along with the business problems that you have, is going to be very interesting. Because imagine if there is a self-service doctor portal, right?
Mhm.
Wherein you can go to that website and says, and the doctor asks you, hey, Eric, what symptoms do you have? And you say, I have an ear pain, this and that, etc. And then it results in a series of questions like, hey, upload your image, upload your video, whatnot. Or it could be sending a swab via an Instacart to you, where you're doing a test remotely, like an administered test,
Right,
and
sure.
uploading the results. And the end of it, the physician is qualifying all this data and sending a prescription through an Instacart in an automated manner to your home, and you have a prescription in 30 minutes, right? Imagine that is the world of shift, where you're really converging your conversations, your question and answer, translating into the research behind in the medical terms and so on, right? I see that kind of convergence helping in various markets.
Yeah.
Helps observability and operations markets. It helps security markets. There are many markets where you will see these applications coming out, right? So where it can simplify the lives of customers and end users significantly.
Yeah. Sure. I'll bring Eve in to comment on this. You're still going to have to monitor things, even though you've got this automatic observability, automatic monitoring. I don't see people being removed from the equation anytime soon, because you do have to kind of stay on top of things. But we are certainly getting closer, but it's almost like it's just in time to a certain extent, right? Because the bad guys have all this stuff too. The bad guys have generative AI. The bad guys have this denial of service attack approach that they have been mastering for years and years. So it's just this constant battle between the bad actors and the good actors. I almost think, though, that we should be doing better at being able to identify where these people are coming from and what they're doing. They're always using proxies to kind of bounce stuff around, but I don't know, Eve, are we just treading water here, or do you think we're actually getting ahead of the curve now?
Well, I'm pretty hopeful that the better part of it will win from the worst part. That's my
Mhm.
ideal view on it, and I think we're having that ethical discussion about the whole AI. So if we can feed it with the right things, we can get on top of people using that for the worst things. That's my vision for the future, and let's hope we're getting there. Like you say, we can feed it. The advantage with generative AI is it learns from new data that gets added to it. You train it on a base system. That's how it responds to whatever you feed it. And once it gets new insights, it becomes smarter. And that's, I think, where most of the people are, for the time being, pretty afraid of that we can't predict how it will evolve in such a way, and it becomes too smart for us. That's the feeling what we're getting. But yeah, I think we can do so much better, and if we can keep bias in a certain way out of that and
Right.
direct it in the right direction, we're very well off.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Bias is an issue. The whole proprietary nature of these things is an issue. I mean, as of the moment, ChatGPT is a black box, right? I asked it, which database do you use? And it said, I won't tell you. I'm like, okay. Well, from an explainability perspective, that does not pass muster. All right. You're gonna have to be careful. I think we are going to see some legislation perhaps at some point, but before we see that, we're going to see some lawsuits. I think some companies are going to start suing OpenAI and some of these others. But I guess they'll just take a leaf out of the Uber playbook, right? I remember when, and this is a bit of a tangent, but we can pick this up in the second segment coming up in a minute. But I remember when Uber was really spreading like wildfire across the United States, I kept thinking to myself, they have to be running afoul of local ordinances and regulations on taxi cabs, because in many cities, you have to get a medallion to drive a taxi cab, and people will pay a lot of money for those medallions. I know a guy who paid like $50,000 in cash in a brown bag in a grocery store parking lot to get his taxi medallion in New Orleans about 10 years ago. So when Uber came around, he was, I'm sure, not too happy about that. But what they did is they just stacked up a whole bunch of money for legal expenses and for lobbying, and basically just ramrodded this stuff through everywhere they could go. And in Paris, they fought back, and I think they've had some real trouble in a few other places too. But probably what's going to happen is there are a lot of lawsuits. They're going to be hacking through stuff. There are going to be a lot of confused legislators trying to figure out what actually is going on as we try to pass some legislation. It's going to be tough. It's going to be weird, but it's not going to be stopped. I can tell you that. Well, folks, don't touch that dial. I'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis.
Welcome back to Inside Analysis. Here's your host, Eric Kavanaugh.
All right, folks, take us to the future indeed. And I can tell you these large language models are absolutely taking us to the future by giving us a reflection of the past. Because these large language models like ChatGPT, like Bard, like DALL-E, these are all different large language models. They are all models built upon a corpus of text, most of it from the web. I think, what is it? ChatGPT is everything before some date in 2021 or something like that. But Bard from Google already has connectors to the real-time web. So those who have used ChatGPT have probably seen it'll answer questions saying, oh, I'm sorry, as a large language model, I don't have access to real-time data, et cetera, et cetera. You can rest assured that's going to change, because they are going to work on this. Because the challenge with these things is that they do hallucinate. They do make stuff up by fusing together bits of information. Now, they're also incredibly powerful, though, at being able to generate text that is very organized, that is very syntactically correct, for example. So they understand meaning, they understand syntax, they understand what things are supposed to look like. It's great at writing poetry, but it's also going to be very powerful in these chatbot scenarios. But the quality is an issue. The provenance is an issue. Maybe Rohini, I'll throw it over to you. These are big issues. I don't think Congress is going to get its act together to legislate soon enough. So the industry is going to have to solve it for itself. And to me, provenance is huge. We need to know where you got this. And the other side of the equation is security and governance and things of this nature. But provenance, I mean, I wonder how effective they could do that if they hadn't thought that through in the architecture of this thing. Going back to re-architect to fit some of that stuff is going to be hard. but I'm guessing that they probably can get visibility into how it's piecing things together. And you score certain things. You can say, hey, this is false. It's just like with Yellow Pages online or Google, like, is this your business? Claim your business, etc. You'll be able to do those things. But I almost think everything is moving too fast, right? How are we going to solve this? What do you think, Rohini?
I think the fundamental problem will become the data quality score. Right, end up having a big use case where companies will start asking, hey, what is the source of data? Where did you get this data from? Right. And there'll essentially be a solution to say, hey, the score is high because it's taking from sources A, B, C. And if you take it from another source, the score could be weaker, right? That becomes the foundational underpinning. And then, like you said, all the problems around data security, data governance, data compliance, all of this have to be solved by some of these large vendors that are rapidly pushing generative AI or ChatGPT or other tools that are going to be available, right? So I think it'll become the onus on them to demonstrate that. And then the other shift that's also possible is if you take companies like NVIDIA, right? They're innovating a lot on AI and developing new technologies and solutions, right? What I can also envision is companies going back to this comfort zone of, hey, let me do a lot of this on my own private cloud, where everything is in my own secure environment, especially large enterprises, financial companies, where they want all the tools, but start running in their own data center or in their own private cloud, right? If that happens, then there is going to be a new wave on that cloud journey as well that might be pose a question mark. So I think we are going to discover a lot in the next 3 to 5 years, Eric.
Yeah, that's interesting. Eve, I'll bring you back in on this one. I believe on-prem is going to have a very long tail. I don't think these on-prem data centers are going away anytime soon. And I've already seen kind of some straws in the wind. There was a company I saw at Teradata at their event in 2019, where what these folks do is they can come in and make your on-prem servers look like S3. It's kind of like MinIO. So MinIO does something that's like S3 for everyone else, basically, right? They created a storage mechanism for allowing you to store lots and lots of data. So I think these on-prem data centers are going to have a kind of a long tail if you can scan your environment, know what functionality you have, know what you can let go of. It should be possible to kind of reinvent these data centers as private clouds. But I don't know. You know more about that stuff than I do. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that will be a way to go, or one of the options where we will go. You see the discussion already going on with the cloud. We thought, yes, it's still scalable. It is very flexible, but the costs, they are sky high because you did the actual architecture not as you should do it in the cloud. I mean, just turn it on whenever you need to compute, whenever you need the memory. So we were not used to put up the architecture in such a way. And now by bringing that hybrid environment in place, that's a different way of on how you can put up your architecture. And with some privacy concerns, I think there is a certain move back towards the on-prem solutions as such. Still, the trade-off between CapEx and OpEx is still a very difficult thing for a lot of companies to anticipate the costs, what they will have in the future. And you will see that there will be definitely a hybrid approach into setting that up. Wherever you need the flexibility, the scalability, you will move that load to the cloud. And a small part will still be on-prem, and they will take the solutions, like you said, the AWS, the S3 buckets on-prem as such. It was natively designed for the cloud in such a way, but you will see that it will be adapted to on-prem solutions as well.
Yeah, the cloud native movement, I think, is going to impact on-prem data centers. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to shake out, but I'd be curious to hear Rohini's thoughts on this. I mean, you folks are now moving from a traditional licensing model to more of a subscription service. Is that going to be just in the cloud, or is that also going to be for on-prem stuff? And how do you pull that off, and how do you not cannibalize existing revenue streams?
So the good part about the SolarWinds strategy, Eric, is we want to meet customers where they are on their cloud journey, right? So what we really mean by that is we announced 2 flavors of the SolarWinds platform last year. One is called the hybrid cloud observability offering, which is essentially an offering a customer can install in a private cloud or a public cloud of their choice, but it's managed by them, right? Meaning self-hosted, self-managed by the customer. That's one model where we provide a subscription model, right? They deploy the software, manage on their own, and it's their data centers for data privacy, security, all reasons. The second model we also introduced is the SaaS platform, right? The SolarWinds platform is available as a service natively on AWS and Azure. So we are asking customers, hey, we are going to give you the underlying cloud as a choice, right? You decide whether you want the instance or a tenant, your tenant to be running on an AWS or Azure environment across the globe. So that's the flexibility that we gave. But of course, the SaaS is a subscription service, whereas on-prem, you can buy a subscription software that you can install. You will get updates pretty much every quarter and periodic updates. You will be eligible for refresh and so on and so forth. We did all that from a product side. But then to simplify that, we also simplified our pricing, packaging, and licensing as well. Because we do have many products in the market, right, in the past, which had different types of licensing. We streamlined all of them into a node-based licensing. So we pretty much ask the customers like, hey, how many nodes do you have? The node could be an application or a database or a network or anything, and say, hey, what do you like to manage? And how many nodes do you have? And it's priced accordingly so that it becomes easy for a customer to understand what's their total cost of ownership.
Yeah.
How soon do I get the ROI and so on.
Sure. I'm sitting here, I'm always thinking of metaphors and different ways to describe things. And to me, the network still is the lifeblood of systems and applications, right? Whether it's a big company or small, there's always a network. And it's almost like if you can monitor the network very closely, it's like getting your blood work done, right? When the doctors take your blood and they run tests on your blood, well, they're figuring out what's happening in your body by virtue of what they see in your blood, right? And you have to learn things over time. Of course, with AI and ML in the healthcare industry, wow, is that going to change the testing market? And I hope we'll have to give much less blood. Of course, that was the big Theranos promise, right? And I think she just went to jail. So she learned the hard way. You got to be careful about how you promote things and what your transparency is. But I bring this up because I'm curious to know from your perspective, from the SolarWinds perspective, you can learn so much about what's happening in a particular environment by just watching the network traffic. I mean, there's other things that you do, but the network really is a primary source of information to be able to help you identify problems, right?
100%. So the unique advantage that we have is we brought in capabilities from 50 odd products that we have had historically, like into network performance monitoring, network traffic analyzer, infrastructure analyzer, then you name it, application, database, you name it, all sorts of things across private and public. We brought all the data that gives us a very unique advantage to say, hey, what's your health score? If you ask us, what's the health score of an IT environment, we can give you a score, but then start pinpointing to where the problem is. If you say the score is 99, we can tell you where that one is missing and what are the specific devices or nodes or applications that are kind of leading to that problem, right? Going back to your first question as well.
Yeah, and ChatGPT and these large language models, they are very knowledgeable about systems issues, about settings, configurations, all these things. All this information is out there. Now, again, you have to vet it, verify it, be careful what you trust when you get out of these things. But I think that a combination, again, of these traditional tools like you have and a large language model can be very powerful in terms of giving very detailed descriptions to the user what is happening, because you can plug into these systems, check all the different systems, all the monitoring that's coming across, and be able to ascertain, hey, this is the problem, that's the problem. Then you just have to go about remediating the problem, and it even give you the instructions of how to do that. So it's very, very useful because it educates people while it's solving the problems, right, Rohini?
Absolutely. No, so you are becoming like a chief architect for observability market, because at the end of it, like we were discussing a few minutes ago, it's the data quality, right? So because we are actually getting real-time data from all these various types of devices, we call it the full stack observability, pretty much take from cloud services infrastructure services, applications, databases, you name it. We're taking logs, metrics, traces, and a lot of real-time information. We aggregate into a single source of truth or a single data platform, because that data platform, because we know that data is right and that's real, and then running language models on top of that data to train that data is going to be critical, so that we can say, when we detect an anomaly and when we can have a conversation with the customer to say, hey, here is a problem with this health score, we can really pinpoint to the specific amount of data or specific set of data. And we know the data is, the quality is right, because that's real time. It's synthetic. I mean, synthetics can help predict from a prediction use case, but from understanding the actual SLA of your business service today, it's data, and the data quality is like highly accurate, right? So that's where we have a unique advantage to kind of paint that story to customers.
This is getting, I mean, I sit here and I kind of have the wheels turn in my head as I'm piecing stuff together. And, they're talking now about, having an AI run a business, for example. Can you train an AI model to actually run your business? And I mean, the short answer is, well, yeah, you can. I don't know that you should yet. Maybe at some point, sort of, but I think it's always going to be sort of a co-pilot. But I will say, the thing is, man, with these machines, they're able to calculate so many queries, do so much thinking, if you will, or really it's processing so fast, much faster than a human, and they can watch for things. So like if you are a senior executive of a company, you got 10,000 employees working for you. I mean, you got to watch out for some privacy issues, obviously, but just knowing the level of interaction between different groups can give you signal. Knowing how much these two people work together can give you signal. And we're in the beginning of a whole new era. So all that stuff also applies to IT governance, IT security, observability, all those things. Keeping the trains run on time is extremely important. That's what these folks do all day. And now with these kinds of technologies, I mean, the ideal scenario is that you get a list of 10 things to focus on today. That's how it changes your days. You walk in and you've got code red on some network issue, you got code orange on some database issue, and that's how you spend your day. So it's going to tell you what to do pretty much all day long. Is that about right? I'll throw it over to Eve to comment on that first.
100%. So actually, if you look at the vision that we have painted for SolarWinds, it's evolving from monitoring to observability to autonomous operations. So what we are seeing is the world of the co-pilot, in the world of IT and dev and SecOps operations, wherein the users can start defining their business requirements. They can be guided on business requirements, but most importantly, given feedback on business requirements to say, hey, the availability, you asked me for the availability of this business service or the cost of this business service to be $100 a month. I try to spin up so many nodes. The cost is going above the range,
right,
or it can go above the range, right? So you can do a lot of business requirements around availability, cost, performance, security, a lot of them, and it's really becoming a partner, an operations partner or a co-pilot partner for enterprises and customers, right? So really guide them, to really work with them hand in hand as a partner to solving their business challenges.
Yeah, and you know why that's so cool, and we'll pick this up in the next segment here. Why that's so interesting is because you're going to be able to adjust the dials on your compute and say, oh, I want to dial up security today because I'm seeing all these hackers try to hit our wall. It's just like on Star Trek, like put all power towards the engines, put all power towards the photon beams, etc. You're going to have that capacity, and that is cool stuff, folks. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. You're listening to Inside Analysis.
Welcome back to Inside Analysis. Here's your host, Eric Kavanaugh.
All right, folks, back here on Inside Analysis, talking to Eve Mulkers of 7W Data and Rohini Kasturi from SolarWinds. And we're talking about the winds of change, how things are really changing in the software world. So many companies are moving to subscription models. Software as a service is sort of an accepted standard now. And what I like to tackle in this last segment is really the conversion or the convergence, I should say, of different functionalities and different roles, because we've had different groups for years and years now, and there are reasons for that. But I think some of that stuff is going to start to change, because organizations are not going to be able to keep as many employees. Frankly, I think you're going to see shrinking of headcount in large organizations, in part because of ChatGPT and things of this nature, in part because of just headwinds, financial pressure, et cetera. And so you're going to see some convergence here. And let's think about the governance world, the security world, the compliance world, the systems management world. All four of those groups really benefit from observability, benefit from knowing how is the network performing, how are our databases performing, how fast are things operating. Or the classic line when you're talking to someone on customer service on the phone, oh, I'm sorry, sir, our systems are running slow today. All right, well, why are your systems running slow? Is it because you have crappy systems and you haven't upgraded? It's because you've been hacked? Is it because, what's going on out there? Well, that's what all these IT technicians have done for years and years and years now. SREs, they typically call them site reliability engineers. They're the people who are trying to figure out what's going on. They're managing the ticketing systems and just figuring out how to sort things all day long. That's what these people do. And I think that you're going to see real convergence there, which is good, because we shouldn't have a completely separate governance group from a completely separate security group, from a completely separate uptime group. Like, all these people are using the same data at some point in time. So shouldn't they be collaborating more, and shouldn't one be feeding the other, as opposed to several people all trying to consume the same information? So this all gets down to workflow, it gets down to organizational hierarchies and all sorts of different things about how stuff gets done. But the fact is that a lot of these AI engines are now able to reach across different systems and basically execute what used to take 3-4 people in various stations to get done. So that is going to change your org chart. It's going to change your titles. It's going to change what people do, how people do them. All this stuff is coming. It's coming fast and furious. And Rohini, I'd be curious to hear from your perspective at SolarWinds, what are you doing to manage the sort of change side of the equation, what they call change management, even for the human side of things? How are you managing that at SolarWinds?
So first of all, two things, right? First of all, we are a company in transformation, rapidly evolving our product portfolio from on-prem to cloud, right? So during the last 2 years, we went through changes in terms of evolving the team skill set in the product organization, developing a lot of cloud development capabilities, cloud ops capabilities, SRE capabilities, you name it. You talked about several rows. A lot of that have changed and converged as well. We went through a lot of that shift. We are going through a lot of changes on the marketing side, go-to-market side, customer success support side. Across the functions, we are changing and continuously evolving. But I think the key here is, how will it change in the next 5 years again in the world of native AI and ChatGPT? And I think the convergence can start from depending on the company's goals. Because if the company's goals are, hey, I want to use the new tools to achieve more productivity, more scale, and more agility,
right,
what would happen is their EBITDA margins can still be low. They can take all the productivity gains from this new tooling, and they would hire more people to do more.
right.
If there are companies that are more EBITDA focused, they can achieve more EBITDA and say, hey, I'm going to optimize costs, reduce and consolidate roles. And that will start happening from the C-suite itself, right? There will be consolidation of some C-suite roles. For example, we're talking about what do we call the prompt engineer as opposed to a typical engineer, right? Or
That's right.
A prompt nurse or a prompt doctor as opposed to a typical doctor. So a lot of that is going to lead to, like, for example, today we have an architect role and a designer role, a product owner, product management, and an engineer who's writing code. I see convergence happening in some of those roles, where a designer who can think through what needs to be solved can produce beautiful code and secure code to really solve business challenges. Similarly, there will be convergence on customer success and support. I do see disruption happening across the board in all types of roles, Eric. But I see it as just like virtualization and cloud have led to changes in the companies.
Yeah, right.
I think if the companies can embrace this change and learn, they can use it to their advantage to growing and even growing their profits and hiring even more people.
Yeah,
right? That's kind of how I see it, but still see how this is going to play out.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a good point. And Eve, I'll bring you back into this because Eve is an excellent prompt engineer. He's learned a lot about leveraging this technology, and it is a different sort of thing. It's different than a Google query. You have to give specific instructions and be precise. The more precise you can be, the more closer you're going to get to the answer that you're looking for. But to me, I think the real winner is going to be the companies who figure out how to leverage this technology at some scale in some significant capacity, like customer service, for example. That's going to be a real big one, customer service, but also just operations and simple things like, think about the annoying side of booking flights to go somewhere. Even to this day, even with all these engines, it takes me like 30, 40 freaking minutes going back and forth, checking the different times. Okay, is this going to work? Is that going to, how much is this? How much is that? And these are powerful engines, and it still takes like 40 freaking minutes when you could have your smart little bot and say, hey, bot, I want tickets to Austin, Texas. I want it to be under $300 within this date range. Go, and just hit your button. And it's just like ding, 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 ding. It's like just going back and forth by itself, doing all this stuff for you. And then guess what? It comes back and it gives you the, you just get the alert. Ding, here's your thing. Do you want to buy it now? Yes or no? Boom, buy that sucker. I mean, that seems complex. It is complex, but we're not far from that. And I think the companies that figure out how to enable all these new technologies are just going to crush it out there. But Yves, what do you think?
Yeah, what you're referring to is the workflow orchestration, what we know already for 20, 30 years, these systems, but they are set up in a certain sequence on how the designer thought that the workflow would work. And I think with the large language models and how they are trained, they're becoming hyper personalized. So they're adapting to how you behave and how you would like to book your flight and what you want to get, and instruct you on how to do that. And that's where I think is the power in doing that. Just before Rohini said about hiring even more people, I just recently saw an interview about the big reset and exponential organizations, where they said back in the days you needed 10,000 people to run a company and to scale and to have that, all these resources. And then it came down. And now with AI technologies, you will be capable of running your company with just 2 people. And the rest will be done by AI systems, by technology. So you can do the ideation, but you can do it at such a speed and at such a scale that we will have a different type of organization these days. And that's where I think it's definitely, these guys had amazing thoughts in the interview. Definitely something you need to watch. But that's my feeling where organizations will go to. And with AI, things will become even more, well, cheaper, even easier available. And that's going to be the big transformation, what we will be seeing. So as a human being, we can get the augmentation, but we need to change and we need to adapt in such a way. And I don't know if we're already ready up to that new way of doing things.
Yeah, it is going to require change of workflow and change of what people do every day. Rohini, maybe I'll throw it back over to you. I'm still maintaining that the major way in which AI affects our day-to-day lives is going to manifest itself in the form of suggestions. I suggest you do this, that, the other thing, whether it's send out emails, call this person, just basic stuff, because it's not that complicated what you're doing in your job. And if you give the AI access to your workflow and your systems, it can track all these things and see who you're talking to. I mean, Google's already doing this in a lot of different ways in your Gmail. Like when you type an email, if you're in the Gmail client and you type an email to a friend, you type in their name, it'll like say, do you want to add this person? Do you want to add that person? Because it knows from recent interactions that those people were on the thread. I mean, that's simple, but it's still pretty compelling, and it saves us time and effort, right, Rohini?
100%, 100%. Productivity is one part of it, right? I can even imagine the world of generative AI diseases, Eric, to make it funny here, wherein, because we are going to be directed to behave a certain way and asked to, guided every certain way, saying, hey, you can do this, you can stand up, you can do this, do that. And that can also result in so much influence on us, and that can result in a new disease called the generative AI disease or something else that will be labeled 10 years from now, right? But again, productivity gains are going to be significant. Like Yves said, there can be startups of 5 to 10 people that can be producing enormous simplicity, security, all of these will become cornerstones, right? And
so that's right. We're going to need all these things for sure, and you're going to be able to, set your boundaries for what constitutes security, what constitutes privacy, et cetera. Well, folks, podcast bonus segment is coming up next. You are listening to Inside Analysis. Okay, folks, back here on Inside Analysis, time for the podcast bonus segment. What a fun show with Eve Molkers of 7W Data and Rohini Kasturi from Solar Winds. And Rohini, I know there are a lot of changes over at Solar Winds, and I have to say, I think you're doing an intelligent thing by just sensing the changing winds, the different ways things are going to be done in the future. And you're actively going about changing your organization, how you execute business, how you do things. What are the biggest changes we've seen in the last year or two?
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric and Eve. So SolarWinds has been going through significant change, right? First and foremost has been the product transformation. We introduced a new SolarWinds platform last year, which has two variants, the hybrid cloud observability offering for existing install base, and similarly a SolarWinds observability, which is a SaaS platform for both existing customers and new customers. So that's something that is gaining significant traction in the market, right? Where the products have changed from monitoring to observability, and we are adding automation and remediation capabilities to that platform. The second part that goes with it is really the business model changes, the pricing, packaging, licensing, right? We have simplified that significantly and created platform tiers like the essential tier, advanced tier, and so on. So customers can get a lot more capabilities in a simplified pricing and licensing model so that they can deploy, and manage an hybrid and multi-cloud environment. That's the other change that has happened. The third change really is to do with customer experience and user experience, right? We have simplified the user experience because in the world of observability and automation, the simplicity is key. APIs are another part of it, but also integrating with end-to-end billing systems, e-commerce systems, and other systems has been integral to simplifying our customer and user experience journey. And the fourth part of it, which you probably heard recent announcements, are changes to our marketing and branding, right? We've changed the SolarWinds logo and changed all the assets surrounding the branding, because the message really is SolarWinds is evolving rapidly across various dimensions. And we want to denote to our install base that, hey, you've been part of our journey for the last 25 years. We are here to meet you on your journey of private or public or hybrid clouds and evolve with you on your hybrid and multi-cloud journey. So we made some brand changes in that regard. That's one change. And last but not the least is our go-to-market changes, right? While we have been known as a mid-market vendor, known for years as a download, try, buy motion, like SolarWinds has been known for that, like the inside sales motion. We are evolving that to a PLG motion and augmenting that with working with hyperscalers like AWS and Azure. We have done some strategic arrangements or agreements with them to grow our business jointly, and also working with global system integrators like the HCLs and the Wipros and Infosys and other such vendors, right? Because with the platform strategy, we can do PLG to a lot of operations end users, but at the same time, the platform enables to address all the use cases for IT and business leaders, right? So we can go to upper mid-market and large enterprises as well to grow our business. But at the same time, our key really is retain our 300,000 customers that we have in the mid-market space. And we do have close to 96% of our Fortune 500 as well. So our goal is to retain them, evolve with them, and gain new customers as well. So
yeah, no, that's a very serious mission, because you already have this big install base who are accustomed to doing things a certain way. But I think you've recognized quite astutely that the world is changing dramatically, and to not change at a time like this is not good. You need to, it's like a storm is coming in, and these ships don't turn quickly. You have to recognize that the storm is coming and start porting towards safety, basically. But Eve, I'll let you finish up with a couple quick comments here. It's imperative that large organizations, and especially software companies, I think, really change what they're doing. And then all these other companies that use the software also have to stay on top of what's changing there and change their technology stack. But what do you think, real quick?
Yeah, adaptability is a very important thing. And just explain this. We have 300,000 customers already, and we keep on serving them. But we're looking into partnerships as well to grow and expand and exchange that knowledge and work together. So partnerships is a very important thing for the future to nurture that and take benefit of those of those ecosystems.
Yeah, that was the word I was going to use, is ecosystem. I saw a great line the other day. It used to take a village, now it takes an ecosystem, right? And you have to know who your partners are and work with them. And there are going to be times and you're going to kind of rub up against them in terms of competitive issues or whatever. But we're all in this together. And I think, the more that we share with each other, the better off it's going to be. And I didn't even get to talk about open telemetry. So maybe we'll get Rohini back on the show in the future. Open telemetry is a huge deal, folks. Now, the open source movement has hit the telemetry space. And so being able to monitor all this telemetry is very, very useful in terms of keeping the systems running efficiently. And that keeps your customers happy, keeps your bottom line happy, keeps your CFO happy. That's what we want. Look these folks up online, Rohini Kasturi and Eve Mulkers. Rohini is of Solar Winds and Eve is 7W Data. You've been listening to Inside Analysis.